Some business news now then on the programme. The first phase of the US-China trade agreement is to be signed later, and our business editor Stephen Carroll is here. He's got all the details for us, Stephen.
I've got as much detail as we have, which isn't a whole lot, but more on that in a moment. The Chinese Vice Premier Liu He is in Washington. He's going to sign this 86-page document with President Trump later this Wednesday. It is a limited agreement which only tackles some of the underlying issues in the now 18-month-old trade war. It will include a commitment from China to vastly increase its purchases of US goods. In return, Washington will cut in half the tariffs that it imposes on around $120 billion of Chinese imports, but not remove them entirely. In fact, the vast majority of tariffs will remain unchanged. There are many more complex issues that aren't addressed in the agreement, as Solange Moujin now reports.
After 18 months of heightened tension, the US-China trade war is entering a new, quieter chapter of reconciliation. In phase one of the new trade deal, many promises have been made. China has pledged to buy $200 billion of US goods. And even if the bulk of tariffs remain in place, the US has vowed to cut them for around $120 billion worth of Chinese imports. Beijing has also promised to stop the forced transfer of American technology to Chinese firms. But this phase of the deal stops short of tackling the bigger picture of China's intellectual property practices.
We're very focused on implementing phase one. We'll start phase two, but we're very focused. This is an enormous achievement for the president and the economic team. This is the first time we'll have a fully binding agreement with China with structural changes, technology protection, and an additional $200 billion of purchases.
According to reports, China said they'll buy $80 billion worth of American manufactured goods over the next 2 years, as well as $35 billion in services, $40 billion in agriculture, and $50 billion in energy purchases. But such promises are much higher than pre-trade war figures, raising questions about how realistic phase one really is. With no set date for phase two, the 86-page document falls short of being a lasting peace agreement, but paves the way for a thawing of trade relations.
A little earlier, we spoke to our correspondent in Beijing, Charles Pellegrin, about how this agreement leaves many of the more difficult issues unresolved.
Those phase two issues are definitely much trickier, much more difficult to resolve, mostly because they get at something that is the industrial subsidies program, which represents basically China's economic model, which gives a huge role to the state in the economy. It is a communist economy after all, and so this will be much more complicated, and this is not likely to change, especially as those industrial subsidy programs are used to fuel China's development, especially China's technological development. Chinese technological development is worrying the Washington side because they want to make sure that they continue to be the world leader in that particular area. So really it gets to some sort of strategic rivalry between two great powers here. And this also explains the American campaign against Huawei, at least according to Beijing. The Beijing side, this explains why the United States is lobbying governments around the world not to give contracts to Huawei to set up 5G networks, or the sanctions against Huawei. Huawei represents this Chinese economic model that the United States wants to change.
That's Charles Pellegrin reporting from Beijing there. Now, a lot of the drama over the US-China trade war has played out on financial markets. They took a tumble at every escalation and breathed a sigh of relief when it looked like those tensions were being calmed. This is the picture at the open on the European markets today. Not much movement. Paris and London up, Frankfurt in the red. And that's really because the markets have known about this deal for a while, so there's no great surprise in this. In Asia earlier, shares were trading in the red. Investors focusing on those comments from Stephen Mnuchin that the tariffs will remain in place for now, and that's feeding into negative sentiment across the Asian markets in trading. Moving on to some other business news. Orders for Boeing planes have slumped to their lowest level in 16 years as the aircraft maker struggles with the ongoing problems with the 737 MAX. After cancellations, Boeing booked orders for just 54 planes in 2019, notably suffering from the collapse of India's Jet Airways. Deliveries fell by over 50% as well, leaving Boeing trailing far behind its European rival Airbus. The 737 MAX was the company's best-selling aircraft before it was grounded for safety reasons last year. Finally, for me, Elon Musk could be in line for a massive bonus if Tesla's share price continues to rise. The electric car maker is now valued at more than Ford and General Motors combined. It's been rising due to increased deliveries, but also an industry-wide expectation that demand for electric cars will keep going up. On Tuesday, the company was valued at just under $97 billion. Under Musk's share bonus deal, if the company reaches and holds a value of $100 billion for 6 months, he pockets stock worth almost $350 million. If ever there was a goal he wanted to reach.
He's so nearly there. 97 to 100. Not
So
much.
close.
Thanks a lot, Stephen. Stephen with Business.